Ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, you are watching What You Need.
Okay, this video is in response to Stripe and some of the brothers on EJ Boxing Hangout. So I'm gonna deal with it. The point that Stripe was making was that he didn't want to see Keith Thurman fight Floyd Mayweather because Keith Thurman, if he fights that fight, he's gonna go on a long hiatus. He's not going to give us the fights we want to see because he's not going to want to fight everybody anymore. He could be a separate guy, and it could also mess with his career and how things go. But basically, he's saying the big money would cause him to go on a long hiatus and he won't fight as regularly. And he cited two particular people, Victor Ortiz and Robert Guerrero, who were not high-profile guys. And when they got the opportunity against Floyd Mayweather Jr., especially Money Mayweather, they did not fight as regularly. Now, some of his statement is not accurate, and besides that, you have to take into account a lot of things. I said before, when Floyd was pound-for-pound champ, yes, he didn't rake in the big bucks, but he did. By fighting him, you got more money than if you were to fight a regular fighter. And we're going to look at the patterns of people who fought him when he was pound-for-pound champ. Now, he started becoming pound-for-pound champ after beating Jose Luis Castillo in 2002. Okay? So, first and foremost, after he fought Jose Luis Castillo, who lost to him twice, what did Jose Luis Castillo do? Let's see. Castillo, after fighting Floyd here, 2002, fought him April 20th. He went on to fight 4 months later, Verdell Smith. 4 months later. Then he fought Floyd again. He lost to him again. And he fought 6 months later, Gustavo Corral. 6 months later. Let's move on. He then fought Victoriano Sosa. Got the opportunity to fight Floyd, right? Again, he's just a pound-for-pound champion. He's not Money Mayweather. He's not the cash cow. Okay, he's looking to meet the cash cow, who at the time was Oscar De La Hoya. Okay, but he fights Victoriano Sosa. What happens when he fights Victoriano Sosa? He fights him, beats him, and then after that, Victoriano Sosa fights 6 months later Miguel Angel Huerta. 6 months later. Let's go on. Philip Endu. Fought Philip Endu. And after being defeated by Floyd Mayweather, Philip Endu fought Isaac Latashwago. I think that's what it is. A South African guy. 6 months later. See a pattern? Now he lost to him. So, of course, he took time off. When you lose a fight, well, this guy took 5 years off after losing to this guy. But the point is, he fought 6 months later. Now, by now, you're seeing a pattern. But let's go on. DeMarcus Corley fought and lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr. And then he fought again 7 months later. Well, 6 months and something. Okay? Darrell Tyson. Let's move on. After DeMarcus Corley, this was at light welterweight, junior welterweight, or super lightweight, he fought Henry Brussels. A similar style to Miguel Cotto. Fought him. And then he fought again 8 months later. 8 months later. Okay, 8 months later. Then he fought again 5 months later. But that's besides the point. He fought again 8 months later. Because you see, boxers don't break routine. If they're fighting twice a year or you're fighting 3 times a year, you're going to fight again at your next anticipated date. Let's move on. It's Boxing 101. Henry Brussels fought Floyd Mayweather on June 25th of 2005. Then he fought again 5 months later. 5 months later. Because you have dates when you fight. Unless you can't get another date. With Al Heyman, there are set dates. We all know there's a program. You fight every so often, every year. You say, oh, I want to fight 3 times a year. Fine. Then they set the dates for you. Let's go on. Arturo Gatti. Now, Arturo Gatti didn't know, according to you guys on the Hangout, that who Floyd Mayweather was. Didn't know who he was. Because he was a big star. Floyd Mayweather was not. He's now a Hall of Famer. Let's see Arturo Gatti. He fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. This is a big superstar, right? When did he fight? After losing to him, he fought 6 months later. Now, you must by now realize there's a pattern, but let's go on. Whether you're well known or you're not well known, you're going to fight a certain time because you have a schedule. Anyway, after him was Shamba Mitchell. He was a former world champion at welterweight. Right? Floyd fought at welterweight. He fought Shamba Mitchell. He lost to Floyd. He was knocked. Shamba Mitchell, if I am not mistaken, I don't know who this is exactly. I thought that Shamba Mitchell was knocked out. Shamba Mitchell. So this must be Zab Judah. Yeah, this is Zab Judah. But let me just pull up Shamba Mitchell's record here for a brief moment. Okay, so here he is. At the end of his career, he's fighting Floyd Mayweather, right? And he fights 6 months later, Jose Luis Cruz. 6 months later. Okay? Former world champion, but he fights 6 months later. Zab Judah, a double world champion at the time. Just lost to Carlos Baldomir. He fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. After that, those 2 losses, he took time out. So he's the first guy to fight a year after. But he's a prominent dude, so why is he fighting a year after? Because he lost twice. Keith Thurman is not going to be coming off a loss. Let's move on. Carlos Baldomir. Carlos Baldomir fights Floyd Mayweather, loses, and fights 8 months after Vernon Forrest. Alright? 8 months after. Now he loses these 2 fights, yet he goes and fights 4 months after Luciano Perez, which shows you that different fighters respond differently. The mindset of a fighter, you can't use 2 examples of 2 fighters before and think that the third fighter will do the same thing, because it has to do with mindset. So whereas Zab Judah couldn't take those 2 losses, and therefore he took a hiatus, or Philip Endu, here we see Carlos Baldomir continues to fight. And he went up a weight class to fight Vernon Forrest, and then he continued. So different fighters have different mindsets. They have different mentalities. Let's move on. Oscar De La Hoya, the cash cow at the time. Floyd got to him. After beating Oscar De La Hoya went on to fight 1 year after Steve Forbes. So a year after, the cash cow, Oscar De La Hoya, fought Steve Forbes. But as you can see, Oscar was at the end of his career. He was nearing the end of his career. But he fought a year after. So look at that. Baldomir fights a couple months after. Oscar takes a whole year off and then fights Steve Forbes. Different people, different responses. It has nothing to do with how prominent they are or not. Let's move on. There are too many factors to consider, actually. Ricky Hatton. He gets knocked out by Floyd Mayweather Jr., yet he goes back and fights 5 months after, almost 6 months after, Juan Lascazo, and beats him. Different people, different strokes for different folks. He then goes on 6 months after to fight Paulie Malignaggi. You must see, different people react differently. So you are assuming that Keith Thurman will do certain things. It's an assumption on your part. There's no empirical evidence that supports what you're saying. And Ricky Hatton was a prominent person. So you saw Oscar De La Hoya take a year off, but Ricky Hatton fight 6 months after, which is typical of fighters who fight twice a year. They fight every 6 months or 7 months. Or sometimes they fight 8 months and then the next one 4 months. But they fight twice a year. Let's go on. Juan Manuel Marquez fights Floyd Mayweather, loses. He fights 10 months after Juan Diaz. But in that same year, he fights Michael Katsidis 4 months after. Okay? So I said twice a year. That's how the guys do it. See, twice a year here, twice a year here. Okay? Because they have a schedule. Unless you get knocked out, you're going to stay to your schedule. Keith Thurman has a schedule. Let's move on. Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley fought Floyd Mayweather May 1st, 2010. And by the 9th of that year, 4 months later, he moved up in weight to fight Sergio Mora. Let's move on. Victor Ortiz. He fought Floyd Mayweather next. Victor Ortiz fought Floyd Mayweather September of 2011. And 9 months later, he fought Josecito Lopez. Okay? He got his jaw broken, so he was off from boxing. Miguel Cotto fights Floyd Mayweather in 2012, April, and Miguel Cotto's back to work facing Austin Trout 7 months later. 7 months later. That's typical. It's typical of boxers. Robert Guerrero. This is the one you cited. Victor Ortiz and Robert Guerrero. Victor Ortiz fought, I think it was 9 months after. Okay, but he got a broken jaw, so he had to take a hiatus. Robert Guerrero was a year after. Yeah, sure he was a year after. But see, there are a couple points. First point is he fought this guy a year after, no doubt. He fought Keith Thurman a couple months after, 9 months after. But he fought Aaron Martinez just recently much more regularly. And Aaron Martinez is a stay busy fight. So what it's telling you is Guerrero has picked up the pace. Okay? And it wasn't just the money from Floyd Mayweather Jr. If that's the case, then he wouldn't have done it back in 2011 when he fought Michael Katsidis for that year. And then he didn't fight again until 2012. A year and 3 months later. Yes, he moved up in weight, but the point is, it was a year later. So if it's all about the money, why did he take a whole year to fight again? And so on. Let's move on. Saul Canelo Alvarez. Saul Canelo Alvarez fought September 14, 2013. That's when he fought Floyd Mayweather. Fought Alfredo Angulo, how many months after? Say it with me, 6 months after. Why? Because that's the general thing that fighters do in this age. They fight every 6 months or twice a year. That's typical when you reach a certain level. Marcos Maidana. Now, you guys like to talk about, oh, he's taking this long hiatus. But what you forget is he fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. twice. The first time he fought him April 3rd, and then he fought him 4 months later, September 13th. You got to factor that in. So in other words, Marcos Maidana fought within 4 months. Now he's taking this long hiatus because he got a big payday even though he lost twice. And that's on Marcos. Right? That's on Marcos if he wants to do that. But you've seen the majority of fighters that fought Floyd Mayweather, whether you think they are prominent or not, have generally fought another fight in 6 to 9 months' time. Because guys generally fight because they have a schedule twice a year. With Keith Thurman, 3 times a year. With Gennady Golovkin, it's the same thing. And they're going to continue to do that. Here are 2 more points. 1. Most of the guys that we are talking about who have taken these long hiatuses or whatever you want to call it, they have either been physically injured, are not mentally stable, or these guys that you're talking about have problems with their family. Like Robert Guerrero, his wife had cancer, so he took time off to take care of her. So, to say that the large sums of money means that Keith Thurman is going to take a layoff, I don't believe that, because in Keith Thurman's nature and in his fights, he's mentally strong. He's also on a schedule. He's kept his schedule, and he probably will keep on keeping his schedule. Furthermore, Keith Thurman is, whether you see it that way or not, a regular WBA champion like Erislandy Lara, which means Lara has been fighting as regularly as he can. And once Keith Thurman has a stream of opponents, he's going to be fighting. That's just it. Keith Thurman's going to be fighting and fighting and fighting. And we already all agree that we don't really particularly see him beating Floyd Mayweather, and he's even conceded to that fact. But what it is a great learning experience for him. And why should he be denied that if he is in a position to exploit that at this present time? I have him, as you saw in my videos before, I have him as the forerunner, the head of the race for the Floyd Mayweather sweepstakes by merit. You guys have a great one.